I'm helping out with our joint press conference. It's the AMC Special Chiefs Assembly on Burns Principal funding, and we're going to have a number of speakers for you today. We're going to start with AMC Acting Grand Chief Betsy Kennedy. So you can just sit and speak close to the microphone.
Good afternoon. Acting Grand Chief Betsy Kennedy. We are here today because our First Nations children and families are in crisis. Canada's broken promises are leaving our children without care, continued cycle of harm, and denying our families justice, and this is unacceptable. This is a critical moment. Canada must stop making empty promises and start delivering real solutions to our First Nations children and families. First Nations will not stand by while the federal government continues to harm our most vulnerable citizens, our children. We are prepared to take action, take radical action to protect their future and ensure their rights are being upheld. I want to say too that the children that need this help is giving up. But we don't want to give up on our children. When they want our help, we will fight to protect them and to make sure that they have what they need. Many of our children now need mental health because of all the problems in our communities. These are problems that have been because of Canada not providing anything that we need in the way of medical, in the way of housing, in the way of protecting our communities with justice. We are here today to protect our children from harm. You know, one child I'll give you, for instance, is he had gone to hospital. And the first thing that happened was, we have to call child and family because your child's in the hospital. No, this is what happens to children all the time. And I can say that the child that went to hospital was done because he had burnt himself while trying to wash his hands after using the washroom. He was only 2.5 years old. And the parents, no, they really love their children. But this is what they have to go through in order to get services, proper services, medical attention. And you know what? I'll tell you, the house that they lived in, they called the people who were looking after it regularly, monthly, weekly. We need to change our water tank. Our water tank is so hot immediately that it burnt this child. When that happened, the father was so upset that he just ripped that water tank out and threw it outside. But yet when he had to go to the hospital to be with his son, they told him, we have to call child and family. Why is it that we have to go through this all the time when our children need help to seek medical attention? We are questioned as parents and grandparents, and we don't need to go through that. Jordan's principle is supposed to help provide that. Jordan was born with devastating loss, whose life was sacrificed while governments fought for jurisdiction. The principle enshrined by the Canadian law. I thought we were people of this land where we can get medical attention just like everyone else. And why is it such a fight between Canada and the province to know and understand that we are people, we are human beings? Yet despite nearly a decade of Canadian Human Rights Tribunal rulings, the federal government continues to fail with delays and inconsistencies in implementing Jordan's principle and have damaged the trust. Federal interference undermines our authority, disrespecting First Nation sovereignty. You know, we as leaders, we have our own sovereignty in our communities, in our First Nations. That's one thing that I was taught when I was young. We are our own sovereign nation. And sovereign nations should talk to government directly, not having to hear from people who are advisors, who are making recommendations. We don't need to hear that. We need to know that we will be helped in our communities, in our First Nations, for our children. The real problem is Canada. We must be united and strong and effective. Let's fight the real enemy. It's Canada and ISC. They are violating Jordan's principle. Let's not wait any longer. Do more children need to die before Canada and ISC get their act together? In Manitoba, the impacts are catastrophic. Families are denied for medical, social, and educational support they need. ISC Manitoba's region's refusal to work with the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs has compounded the suffering. This is not fairness, it's cruelty. I had one mother yesterday come to me saying, I need your help. My children need help. They are living in poverty right now. And she was told, the only way you will get help is if you call Child and Family, and that we will help you in that way. But why should she call Child and Family when they are living below what is supposed to be given? And we live with everything less every day. Our children live with less. And why do we have to keep fighting? Why do we have to be doing these things in order to be heard? Jordan's principle was there to help us, to help our children, to help our families. That's what we should be going for. And we want to tell Canada now, we will not do anything right now until Jordan's principle is finished. You know, Jordan's principle to us was to help us forever. There's no child that doesn't stop growing, that doesn't, you know, that's not born. It has to go. It has to continue. The guidelines that were put there were never there. Now all of a sudden, just because we were told to spend, now we're being denied the program. And I was told earlier and listened to one of our leaders saying, this is not a program. This is something that is needed for our community.
Let's get rolling with this. The backlogs that you face is not our doing. It's your guys' doing. Listen to us First Nations. Listen to us. We know what we want. We know what we need. We know how to fix this. Let's work together. We're committed to working together. But without Canada coming to a table, communication is truly a voice that we can all share together. But without that communication, it's not there. We need to work together. So let's start working together for the betterment of our children and the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Acting Grand Chief for MKO, Chief Moore Security from Bobsley. Up next, speaking on behalf of SCO, Southern Chiefs Organization, is Chief E.J. Fontaine from Sagging.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is E.J. Fontaine. I'm the Chief of the Sagging First Nation and also a member of the Southern Chiefs Organization Executive Committee. We're raising our voices today in unison to demand that our treaty partners, the federal government of Canada, fulfill its obligations to our children, First Nations children across Canada. We are deeply concerned about our federal treaty partners' gross mismanagement of the Jordan's Principle program and its recent decision to delay funding. Jordan's Principle was legislated for First Nations children. It's a legal obligation. And now our children are paying the price for the federal government's inability to manage the program. We've all seen this before. Jordan's Principles applications are backlogged, and money is not flowing to cover the costs which the government is obligated to cover, creating a financial and crisis in our communities. The backlog is 6,000 applications at the regional level, with up to 3,000 marked as urgent. There are 140,000 waiting in the queue at the national level, with 20,000 marked as urgent. The backlog is a number, but at the far end of the paper trail are children, actual children, and family in desperate need of support. SCO has a unique way of running Jordan's Principles program. We deliver services differently than other provinces. At SCO, our Jordan's Principle coordinators are in the schools, in hospitals, and health facilities. We're collaborating with other organizations out there to deliver much needed supports to First Nations children. We are in provincial systems, and we can identify the gaps that exist. Our coordinators see where improvements can be made because they are right there in the environment. Federal employees and staff at Indigenous Services Canada cannot do that. They're not in our communities. They don't collaborate to the extent we do with organizations and other levels of government. We are at the community level working with families beyond the money needed to support the special needs of our Jordan's Principles families. We empower families to be responsive to the needs of their children, show them how to link to other programs for support. Working at the community level, we are seeing the children and their needs through a personal lens. The oversight on approving applications must be placed in First Nations hands. Families are in a crisis due to the delays and denials of essential services by the federal government. The ongoing funding crisis is putting our children's futures at risk and our long-term survival of our communities, really. As we head into the holiday season, our children need help. This is meant by the joyous time of year, but for many waiting for needed funds, it's not. Canada must act. The future of our children is non-negotiable. Canada cannot fix its fiscal issues on the backs of First Nations children. So by not being able to provide basic necessities in many cases to our kids, in effect what's being created is a humanitarian crisis in our communities. We can't provide our kids with food, medicine, and the list goes on. And the long-term impacts of that are going to be disastrous for the First Nations communities. And like one of the chiefs mentioned earlier, we feel that there's almost a deliberate attempt here to eliminate the Indian, much like they tried to do in the residential schools. So, miigwech.
Thank you, SEO, Chief Fontaine. Up next, we have Chief David Fate from Fisher River. So I'll move the microphones for you.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I'll be very brief in my comments, but as I mentioned earlier today in the General Assembly, is Canada has a legal obligation to the families that are supported by the Jordan's Principle program, and we're going to do whatever is necessary to ensure that Canada follows through with the legal obligation. And just as we move into the Christmas season, our families are always first and foremost when we gather, and in particular our children, because the children are the future of our communities. And our families have suffered historically, because of the things that Canada had put in place to, basically to eliminate the First Nation communities. Historically, it's written in the history now, but with the Jordan's Principle program supporting, we just want to ensure that, our children are going to be looked after as we move into the future. Like I say, thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Up next, Chief David Moonias from Pimicikamak Cree Nation, and I don't know how close you want me. I'll let you pull the microphones close.
All right. Sorry. All right, thank you. Tatabiskat no gagano, kidong tagayayek. My name is David Monias, of Chief of the Nation for Pimicikamak. I've been recently appointed to the National Children's Chiefs Commission to deal with issues like this at the national level, along with AFN, on behalf of Manitoba. I have Chief Lavisser and as well also Chief Heidi Cook as my alternates on that commission as well. Jordan's Principle is established to ensure that First Nations children receive service they need when they need them without being held back by jurisdictional gaps or any dispute of bureaucratic delays. However, despite the clear directives from the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal, our children continue to face systemic barriers and delays in receiving the necessary services under the Jordan's Principle. This is not just a funding issue. It's a human rights issue. It continues to be a human rights issue. The situation in our community is dire. Families are struggling every day. We get calls every day from our children, from our families, grandparents and aunts and uncles, in trying to meet the needs of our children. We need to make sure that the funding that should be available to help our children needs to be in place. And we need to break down those systemic barriers. We need to ensure that funding is provided in a timely manner. Like stated before, a lot of our First Nations are bridge financing the services and the programs that are supposed to be paid for by Canada. And that puts us in jeopardy as well for third-party management, co-management situations. Because of those situations, that puts us in deficit. In addition to delays, we continue to face lack of meaningful consultations with First Nations communities. Decisions are being made without realities that we face on the ground. What I mean is basically they centralize all decision-making regarding Jordan's Principle. So anything that we have a need for the children that we service, we have to send up to Ottawa for them to review. It becomes bottleneck in that situation, and it's really hard for us to get some response back or some funding back. Yet the principle states that provide the services and worry about the funding later. And that's what they're supposed to be doing. They should fund the monies to the First Nations needed, when needed, to help the services, to serve the children and the families. So for us, this is not only a breach of trust, but the direct violations of the commitments made under Jordan's Principle. Our Canada must take immediate action to address these critical issues. Our children are not statistics, they are our future. We need investments in community infrastructure, more resources for families, and a clear commitment to delivering services in a way that respect the needs and realities of First Nations. And that's funding land-based services as well, to make sure we have the proper infrastructure, water, sewer, housing, and everything that's required to meet the basic needs of a child. That's a special needs child. When you have a child in special needs in Winnipeg, you just go make a referral to the children's disability and you will receive those services. And it seems like that's not available to our children anymore. For the same reason this thing was created, called Jordan's Principle, and it's for those same reasons now we're being questioned whether it's true or not. It's like we're told that we're being liars and so forth, But the truth is that it's real. The children's needs are real, the children's disabilities are real, the lack of resources are real, and we need the funding to get it going. So stop meddling around with doing reviews when you're actually the ones that are at fault in here. It's your system that's breaking down, not ours. And now you're putting the blame back on us and making us pay for it. You're penalizing us. So we call on the government to take responsibility for the failures in the administration of Jordan's principle, to ensure that the backlogs are addressed and deliver on the promises made to our children and families. No child should be denied the service they need, and the time for action is long overdue. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you. I know we only have a few more minutes. Thank you, Chief Munoz. We only have a few minutes left. I'm gonna open it up. Is there any chief that would like to quickly speak? Chief Levisser?
Chief Angela Levis.
I'm gonna move these microphones here a little closer to you. We just know they're all on deadlines, so.
Chief Angela Levisser, Nissatuasa Cree Nation. I want to thank my colleagues for the comments that they have made. I want every Canadian to understand what Jordan's principle is. As was mentioned earlier, Jordan River Anderson was a young First Nations boy who died. He died while the province and Canada were arguing over who should pay for his medical care. I want to say to all Canadians right now, can you imagine, those of you who have children and grandchildren, your child dying in this country, Canada, while the province and the feds argue over who should cover the care? That would never, ever happen, only to First Nations children, which is shameful. As my colleagues mentioned, we are the first original inhabitants of this land. This is our land, this is our country, and Canada has created the current situation that exists, where our children are living in abject poverty. Our children are living in fourth world countries. This is why, through the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal, Jordan's principle was established. I must reiterate, this is a legal imperative. It's not a choice. It's not an option. And yet, Indigenous Services Canada is treating Jordan's principle as if though it were. And in the meantime, First Nations children's lives are at risk. I'll give you a quick example in the interest of time. I've been contacted by several mental health providers. Some have been waiting for payment since May. 7 months to wait for payment for services that they've already provided to First Nations children, critical services. So when there are so many First Nations children needing services such as mental health, and you're denying those services, lives are literally at stake. And as I asked earlier in the Assembly, does another First Nations child have to die? Will that be the next headline? Before ISK gets their act together and starts fulfilling their legal duty and obligation. And my final comment is this: health is a treaty right that's being denied, like many of our other treaty rights. And yet, once again, we are the poorest of the poor, living in fourth world conditions, while the rest of Canada enjoys the benefit of our lands and resources. Totally unacceptable. So ISK, we're calling upon you to honor your duty and obligations as treaty partners, but also to ensure that there are no longer delays and backlogs with Jordan's principle. Egosani.
Thank you, Chief Levisser. I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Chief Clinton Keeper, Little Grand Rapids.
Chief Clinton Keeper, Little Grand Rapids.
Bonjour, Sagche Gabon de go Namendote, Shibatigong Donji Nindogi Maka Niwete. So the reason why I'm here today is to support my colleagues, the chiefs, that are speaking on behalf of our children. 2024, we still live in the illusion of freedom within our own country. The Indian is not free in this country. Well, the government creates these policies, and it seems like they're set up to fail. Still today, our children, our youth are dying on the street. How many times is Canada going to abrogate and derogate our rights? They violate the Constitution that they entrenched, Section 25 and 35. Still today, they break it. How far are we going to go and allow Canada to let our people die? Or is that what they're waiting for all of us to die slowly? A lot of communities, it's not just Jordan Principle, it's a broader picture. A lot of our communities don't have clean drinking water. They have H. pylori and causes stomach cancer. I had my stomach removed when 10 years ago. They took out my spleen. They took out half of my pancreas. That's because I had H. pylori, and it tested positive in our water supply. And my people today are still getting tested, so I just want to say miigwech to the chief. We have strong leadership here in Manitoba. We're going to continue working together to try and set things right for our people within this country. Enough of this bullshit, so miigwech.
Open the floor, comments or questions from the media. Just state your name and where you're from.
Maggie Wilcox, Radio Canada. Grand Chief Kennedy, you mentioned the need for radical action, and you've been in dialogue with the government for many years. What could this radical action look like? What steps are you willing to take if your voices remain unheard?
1 second. Yep.
You know, if we had more meetings with government and letting them know what our people are going through, and that this action that we want is to be able to tell them that we're not going to take it anymore, and that if you want to do something, you should be meeting with us and providing us information on what needs to be done. Otherwise, we will provide that information on what medical needs in our communities and our children need in order to get help. And we wouldn't have to go through this every year or every day in order to make our voices heard. Thank you.
But are you prepared to take any actions other than these listening circles and dialogue? How can you make your voices heard if people don't listen to you and don't give you these opportunities to talk?
I understand that the CRT, Community Heritage Tribunal, had mentioned that this is we've been put behind all the time, and that I understand that there are legal actions that can be taken in order to do something, and if we can do that, and we will do that if we need to. But we want to give an informed Canada that this is what needs to be done in order to protect our children, our communities, and our families. And if we need to take that step, then I think that's the radical action that we will take. Thank you.
All right, CT.
Scott Anderson, CTV. What was discussed, what did you hear in the meeting today, and were there any outcomes of the meeting?
That we want to wait with Canada and tell them, you know what, we didn't put this criteria in there. We understood under Jordan's principle when we first came out that we can do it what we need in our communities for our children and our families. And then all of a sudden, when we're doing that, they start putting in these criteria, and that they will visit and look at these criteria. And it's going to take months per request. And many of our children are going without now. And why do this before Christmas? And when they're really needed, when this help is really needed to our communities, to our children, and to our families, why are they doing it before Christmas when they could have done this during the summer, when they could have done this next year, or even provide us that they were going to do this? But now, in order, they've been cutting our program dollars, our programs, and we utilizing other programs to help our families. And, the promise was there. They said they were going to reimburse us. And, we've been doing what they have been telling us to do, spend, spend, spend. And now we get this. And that's totally not fair.
Sorry. And a follow-up, are there ongoing conversations with the government on this, or when are you guys meeting with the government of Canada? And just kind of what's next?
Yes.
Yes.
Can we get
I'd like to, yes. Thank you. Thank you, Acting Ground Chief. I wanted to answer your first question before. I'd like the media to know what happened in the Assembly today. Myself, my fellow chiefs, and also the Ground Chiefs were very offended. There was a representative from ISK, Jordan's principal, named Julian Casconagaway, I can't remember his last name. This is the level of disrespect that we were shown as First Nations chiefs and Grand Chiefs. He was on a office chair with wheels and proceeded to roll back and forth, back and forth. I'm not making this up, okay? And I've never heard such flagrant apathy in a person's voice as he rattled off nonsense monotonously while we sat there. And neither he nor Rod Graham directly answered our questions. It was offensive, very offensive. Chief Clear Sky called this emergency assembly because these are very urgent issues. And speaking for myself, I was left with the feeling that they could not have cared less if they tried. And I think that ISK, even the minister, Patty Hajdu, should be ashamed for sending such people to meet with the heads of First Nations governments. And then once again, they did not answer our questions. They wasted our time. We were very clear in terms of what the answers were that we wanted to have answered, the questions we wanted answered today, sorry. And I just felt it was a grave display of disrespect towards our First Nations chiefs, our Grand Chiefs, our communities, but most of all, our children.
What were some of those questions that you were looking to get answered?
Okay, well, as was mentioned by many that are here at the table, there is a significant backlog in Jordan's principal requests. We asked for a timeline. When can we expect these claims to be processed? We asked them, why are you deferring all these claims to headquarters in Ottawa? And these are questions that taxpayers should be asking. If the regional office of ISK in Manitoba is so incompetent that they need to send all these claims to headquarters, why are they being paid? Why do they exist? Why are taxpayers paying for the regional ISK office in Manitoba? That's my question for all of you. You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Can I ask one final question? You've talked a lot today about government failure, you're discontent with the government. Do you still have any confidence in this administration?
Well, what do you think when we've been denied the proper funding all these years and questions about our children on what needs to be done? So, no, I guess we really don't trust right now. We want to be able to see that they are helping, but every time when we're supposed to get help, we don't have it. All of a sudden, like we all say, they provide us funding and then all of a sudden we're set up for failure. Well, certainly this has happened today, and that we don't know if we will get funding. We followed their criteria, our understanding of what they had wanted, but no, they, instead of telling us, you're supposed to do it this way, well, why didn't they put those criteria in earlier when they first wanted this? Instead of having us spend the money on what we did in our communities, especially in our culture, wanted to have cultural camps and to help our children learn and to be able to go to school and not be afraid. We do those things. My community, I only go as our children will go as grade 8. And they're gone by the time they're 12. The first time when I was home, the mothers were crying. And there was no help for them mentally to losing their children. It was just like residential school over again. And then the kids come back and they, this is what happened in our school. It's still happening. And yet we're always questioned on what needs to be done in our community. Well, we provide that, but we certainly don't get help. This is what we get. We get questioned, and we get saying, oh, no more funding until you do a report. You know, we've done reports every year. As a matter of fact, I think we're getting skilled at it. But they're not happy. What else can we do? Like Chief Lavaseur says, I would question Canada on what they're doing for our First Nations, our communities, because they are certainly spending to other communities, other European countries, and providing a lot of help there, and yet we still live in fourth world conditions, and that we shouldn't be doing that. We shouldn't even live like that. We should be having our children be promoted to what they want to be, you know? Not wind up quitting and staying home because they're scared to come out here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, the last comment. Bring you the microphone again.
You asked about some of the radical things that needed to get done. I think one of the things to do is just declare a state of emergency, because we are in that state right now with all the First Nations. Every one of us will be declaring a state of emergency regarding Jordan's principle. It has to be done. If that doesn't work and there's no action, then we have to make sure that we file an emergency injunction against the government of Canada to make sure to force them to comply with the orders of the CHRT. And I think that's what we need to do. But also, you can look at taking this to the international level and report back and say, listen, this is what Canada is doing, violating our human rights. You know, they're always espouse and say that they're the champions of human rights, but they're not. And that's what we have to expose and say, this is something that's happened. We have to take it to International Children's Rights Committee at the United Nations. And that's something we have to make sure we do. So those are radical stuff that's open to us, and we have to discuss that at this assembly to make sure if that's where we're going to go. But those are the options. I just want to address that. Those are things that we seriously need to consider. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for coming today. I think we have a resolution we need to get passed still.
Thank you.
We would like to pass you